Mr. President, dear Carlos Alvarado, dear Olivier Dabène, dear Professor, you know very well Costa Rica. Dear Gaspar Estrada, ladies and gentlemen ministers, ladies and gentlemen ambassadors, dear professors, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Mr. President, this is a fantastic honor for us to welcome you today. You are the first head of state in our new campus, and this is really a good news for us. I would like to very welcome you, and I would like to thank you for devoting a few moments of your visit to Paris to addressing our students and guests. And this is a kind of loop, because 4 years ago, at the beginning of your mandate, you were with students, you were discussing what you want to do for your mandate, and now, at the end of your mandate, you are back in Paris, you are back in Sciences Po. And I think this is a very fantastic loop, this is a fantastic honor for us to hear you and to explain what you did for your country and what you did also at the European and the international level when it comes to climate change, when it comes to environmental transition. My message this morning is very simple. Costa Rica is very welcome at Sciences Po. We have 10 students, you met 2 of them. We want to reinforce our collaboration, our partnership with your national university, which is a very strong and very important, internationally speaking, university of research. And I wanted really to highlight your international role when it comes to climate change. Thanks to your leadership, the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People has been launched during the One Planet Summit. You co-chair with France and the UK a group of over 90 countries to reinforce the ambition and with the central goal of protecting at least 30% of land and ocean by 2030. You also created a national decarbonization plan, and I think France could be inspired by your plan. And what is very, very fantastic is that 98% of energy, electric energy, used in your country comes from renewable resources. And I just have a personal souvenir to share with you. When I was General Secretary of Danone, I was at the UN, and we heard what you said about the loss of biodiversity. And this is the reason why, with Danone and 40 other companies, we launched the One Planet business for biodiversity to tackle the loss of biodiversity when it comes to agriculture. And we were collectively inspired by your speech, and I wanted just to tell you that and to pay my tribute to your speech. Then, over the past few weeks, as you know, the international situation is very critical due to the war in Ukraine. I know that you will have a word around that situation. And to end my speech, I wanted also to tell you that at Sciences Po, we do have a very critical situation when it comes to the situation of our colleague, Fariba Adelka. She has been in prison for 1,000 days now. And we do believe that there is something to do to protect researchers abroad, especially in dangerous parts of the world. And this should be an international action to protect researchers. And we have obviously our thoughts for Fariba at this very period of time. Thank you again, Mr. President. And now I leave the floor to Olivier Dabène. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Directeur. Estimado señor presidente, querido Carlos, bienvenido a Sciences Po. 4 years ago, I'll switch to English now. 4 years ago, we had the great honor to receive you at Sciences Po here during your visit to this country. It was in the framework of the Peace Paris Forum. You had only been in office for a few months, and very serious political issues were on the horizon. However, on this occasion, I drew the attention of the students to the exceptional character of your country. According to the Latino Barometro 2018, support for democracy was the second highest in Latin America. Costa Rica was the top country in the region, depending on whether you look at the popularity of the president, by then, confidence in the judiciary, for instance, or confidence in the electoral branch, or simple satisfactions with life. Costa Rica is still the country of pura vida. And of course, some of these indicators have declined over the last years, but support for democracy remains among the highest in Latin America. And the country scores best in the region when assessing indifference for the type of regime, for instance, very low in Costa Rica. Support for possible military rule, also very low, exceptionally low in Costa Rica, as compared to other Latin American countries, of course. Or civil rights, also a strong feature of Costa Rican democracy. So Costa Rica today continues to be a model of consolidated democracy, in deep contrast with the rest of Central America in particular, and that made its reputation on the international arena. Mr. President, this morning you wish to express your views on your international policy record. With 3 days to go before the second round of the election in Costa Rica, I cannot guarantee that you will not receive questions about the elections, but it is with pleasure that we will listen to you on your conduct of diplomacy. I'm in particular curious to hear about the lessons you draw from two characteristics of Costa Rica's positioning in the international arena: smallness, allowing creative agency, and reputation, securing credibility. Over the last 4 years, you have been able to take advantage of Costa Rica's reputation as a largely carbon-free country to launch initiatives and find partners, including friends. So how would you assess this effort now? This is what we are anxious to find out. So, Mr. President, you have the floor. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président et Monsieur le Directeur. Merci, Olivier, et tous les élèves ici aujourd'hui. C'est vraiment un plaisir d'être encore une fois au Sciences Po. Thank you very much for having me again. It's quite an honor. And as the director was saying, it's a great opportunity for myself, actually, because the first time I came to Sciences Po, it was on 2018. Olivier was reminding me, November on 2019 for the Paris Peace Conference. By then, I was just at the beginning of my mandate. And now it's a great opportunity to look back, because when I came the first time, I was telling the students, I know at least there was one that was there. I don't know if there were any others. But I was telling them what our plans were, what we were going to do or about to do. And now I can look back and tell you what was accomplished and perhaps humbly share some of the learnings, if that's a proper word, of that voyage. So when we came, one of our great ambitions internationally was to have a decarbonization plan. Costa Rica strongly supported the Paris Agreement on the 2015, but the agreement was but a roadmap and it needed implementation. So from 2015 to 2019, 4 years, there were not many concrete plans to have the Paris Agreement put into action. So after Sciences Po, on February 2019, we launched our decarbonization plan, a plan of 10 pillars with 3 stages to have a clear roadmap that by 2050, Costa Rica will be fully free of fossil fuels absolutely, a fully decarbonized country, actually going into being carbon negative. So we launched that, and we started working on the 10 pillars. I'm not going to specify on all of them, it will take too long. But in those terms, let me just say, we increase the electrification of transportation, given that we have a clean electric matrix. More than 99% of our electricity is clean and renewable. We can electrify our transportation. For the past years, we managed to develop a grid of auto chargers. So now you can charge anywhere in Costa Rica. You can travel anywhere in an electric vehicle, and to Panama as well. We managed to do that. The First Lady had a great deal to do with that. We designed 2 electric trains, one metropolitan train of 82 kilometers, which actually now has the Green Climate Fund finance. Is the first train project in the world financed by the Green Climate Fund because of its design, because it's fully moved by renewable energies. And so a 182-kilometer train on the Caribbean for cargo. This is not only going to make us more clean, but more competitive. Why? Because it's going to make cargo cheaper and it's going to add value. Whatever we export through that train is going to have less carbon footprint than our competitors. Also, in electrification, we give tax relief to the import of electric vehicles. Our problem is not actually being on the side of the demand. It's being on the availability of sufficient technology for the transition, which is kind of a run. In agriculture, in 2015, Costa Rica launched the first NAMA facility coffee, which is adaptation and mitigation, national adaptation and mitigation for the production of coffee in a sustainable way. So in the decarbonization plan, we expanded that to address other main crops such as sugarcane, rice, bananas, plantains, and also livestock. And livestock has been quite incredible because it completely changed the way cattle is handled in the tropics. We're using trees for the fences. We're using pastures that are higher with longer roots to absorb more carbon and changing how we feed the cattle in order to reduce methane emissions. And it's been quite successful as well, which is good news for those who love to eat meat and have guilt of the impact on the environment. So in those pillars, we advanced a lot, but there's another great pillar, which is nature-based solutions and conservation. Many people think that we need revolutionary technologies to address climate change, and we indeed need those. But the best technologies to address climate change are the ancient technologies. It's nature itself. Nature has the power to recover itself at great, fantastic rates. But it just needs the chance for us to let nature recover biosphere, biodiversity, and to moderate the climate. So, as the director mentioned, 2019 was a complex year for climate change and climate action. You might remember that the Trump administration at the time withdrew from the Paris Agreement. And also in 2019, Brazil declined to organize the COP. So 2019, the prospect of the year in the struggle against climate change was not looking good. So then Chile and Costa Rica raised their hands and said, we're going to organize the COP because the COP needs to be held. So Costa Rica organized the pre-COP, and Chile was to organize the COP, but given the situation in Chile, it ended up being organized in Spain. You see, to organize a COP, you need more than 1 year because of its complexity. And in this case, Costa Rica organized a pre-COP in 7 months, and Spain did it in 1 or 2 months, a COP. But it happened. And during the pre-COP in Costa Rica, the ministers of France, Costa Rica, and the UK came up with the High Ambition Coalition. And when we were discussing this in Costa Rica, many people said, this is too ambitious. Having by 2030 protect 30% of the land and 30% of the ocean is too ambitious. But then again, we said ambition is what we need. Why? Because the planet is we are about to kill the planet. It sounds so simple, yet it is, and painful as well. So we created the High Ambition Coalition, which was launched in France in the One Planet Summit. By 2019, there was only 5 countries. After Glasgow in last year, there were more than 70 countries joining the High Ambition Coalition. By now, there are more than 90 countries. And we're talking about small countries, and we're talking about large countries, being one of them India, for example, Madagascar. So this, if accomplished by 2030, provides a great hope that things in terms of nature-based solutions and conservation are going to have an impact. Why is it so relevant? Protecting the ocean. Oceans are one of the great collectors of CO2 and the great repositories of life in the planet. Also, for example, the great repositories of the reproduction of species, for humans not to extinct species that we also use for human consumption. Similarly with the ecosystems on land, on carbon absorption. Fresh water that large cities, just like Paris, use, or air, or climate or temperature regulation. Those services do not come from cities. Those services come from the biosphere, from the environment. We tend to forget that. There's a symbiosis between the environment and the urban environment. There's no life, there's no urban life without the biosphere. That's why it's so key to protect it. So there's hope there. And in the last COP, 4 Latin American countries committed on protecting their oceans. Ecuador, in Galapagos, Panama, Colombia, and Costa Rica. And last December, we delivered protecting our ocean. We used to have only 3% of our ocean protected. Costa Rica is 92% ocean and only 8% land. So the 30% of our ocean protection represents twice the size of our land country. And we protected the area throughout the Cocos Island, one of the key ecosystems in the world, said by UNESCO to be patrimonio. How do you say patrimonio? I don't know, Minister. Heritage. Thank you. Heritage of humanity. So we did that. And that's a legacy not only for Costa Rica or for our children, it is for the world. And to Oliver's question, it's a way in which relatively small countries can demonstrate that change is possible. If a relatively small mid-income country in the middle of the Americas can have 99% of its electricity being clean and renewable, and if it can protect more than 30% of its ocean and land, and at the same time economically grow, how come others with more resources cannot do that? And that message is pretty strong in the multilateral arena. There are many fellows that really liked us, many that not that much. So in terms of environment, with other things, now we are really encouraged with the production of hydrogen, green hydrogen. Just yesterday, two of the big companies of Costa Rica, one that is designing the plasma engine and another one that's a capital investment, joined forces and became the fourth major conglomerate interested in investing in hydrogen, in green hydrogen in Costa Rica, which is a great achievement. It's the beautiful thing about hydrogen is, for example, the vehicles or the buses, is when whatever you produce, when you mobilize, is water. That's the outcome that a hydrogen engine produces. And it's actually clean water. But this all happened in a very difficult context. For one hand, when I was here in November, we were about to vote in Costa Rica fiscal reform. Those are not very popular for you who are involved in politics, because Costa Rica was about to enter into default. And we managed to approve a fiscal reform. We had the longest strike in the educational sector, 90 days of strike. Very tough. But we managed to approve that. And when we thought that the complex stuff was over, COVID came along in March of 2020. And it was very tough for all countries in Latin America, not only around the world. Because in Latin America, countries were highly indebted, high levels of debt in the Caribbean. So it was the perfect storm. Why? Because of Costa Rica never went into a lockdown. That's one thing. Our system, health system, we did not use lockdowns we used something called a sanitary vehicle restriction. So we reduced mobility only by forbidding private vehicles to circulate, particularly during night. But it was a perfect storm because economy growth decreased because of the lack of commercial and many and particularly tourism decreased. There was an increase of unemployment. There was an increase of public expenditure to address the pandemic. But if you have an increase of public expenditure with a decrease of income in government, your deficit expands very rapidly. So all of the region was put into stress. And at the same time, the agencies that qualify risk started putting worst ratings of all of the countries, as if there was not a pandemic going on. So the way the countries finance themselves become more expensive. Quite a dilemma. And then all governments had this dilemma of how to deal in a responsible manner with the pandemic, which was a very difficult balance. How to balance human safety, not to have the hospitals crowded, but at the same time to handle certain levels of economic activity to protect people's livelihoods. This was a very strong dilemma. There were countries that pursue a more populistic approach, like ignoring the pandemic. There were other countries that pursue a more scientific approach, taking heat out of people's insatisfaction, but trying to do the right thing to protect life and protect jobs. And that was it. And we've been in that game for about what now? More than 2 years. You gain weight through anxiety in those times. If you see the video for 4 years ago, you'll notice. But we leverage on human talent during the pandemic. My piece of advice is listen to the specialists, all of them. There was none with the whole truth. You have the epidemiologist, you have people experts on handling crisis, you have the experts on economy, you have the experts on society, you have the actors on mobility. And from all of that, you need to build your own frame for decision making. And sometimes you have to do the right thing, which is not necessarily a popular thing to do. Because of human talent, we were able to become the 7th country in the world to receive vaccines on December 2020. 24th of December of 2020. And why? It was because our physicians and our technicians, we started with our foreign affairs minister the discussions with the companies, with the private companies that developed the vaccines. We're in the process of developing the vaccines. When we started the discussions, they were in the first phase trials. But with the MOUs and privately, they delivered the ad. They gave us access to the information so far of the results. And the scientists of Costa Rica said, we need to pursue this. We need to sign the contracts now. It was a very great risk, because it was committing public money to something that was not yet proved. But we took the risk, and we have access to the vaccines. And that proved to be the right thing to do, because the global multilateral system through COVAX delivered too late the vaccines. And I think one of the learnings is that science delivered the vaccine, but politics around the world failed to deliver it evenly throughout the world. It was very sad to see how the developed world captured most of the vaccines, while at the same time science said there was not going to be a solution at all until the vaccine was fully deployed. So that contradiction was a political contradiction. It was very sad. Luckily, many political actors reacted and started delivering vaccines. Spain did, France did, many other parties did, Canada did. Eventually, the US did. And well, when we thought that this, perhaps the most difficult time of my government was when we were at the midst or the middle of the pandemic. We had a hard setback on the economy because of the hit of COVID. Then we needed to negotiate a program with the IMF, because we reversed our situation, our fiscal situation. So for the second time in 4 years, we were again against the possibility of default. So we negotiated with the IMF. So during the pandemic, with the negotiation with the IMF, we had really hard strikes that reminded us of the yellow jackets here in France. Very complex. That was perhaps the toughest moment of our government. That was September 2020. But well, by January 2021, we have an agreement with the fund. It's not the nicest thing you can do, but it's necessary. We did an agreement and a reform without privatizing any of the public companies, which is we preserved the welfare state. We didn't fire no one, and we didn't reduce the salary of no one, but we introduced tough reform, a labor public reform. In Costa Rica, the public sector has lots of privileges vis-a-vis the private sector. And well, luckily, today's perspective of Costa Rican economy is the four rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Fitch, Moody's. We, for the first time in 8 years, the four of them they changed our rating from negative to positive. No, sorry, from negative to stable, be stable, which is very good in terms of how that eases the weight of the cost of how we finance ourselves, which at the end of the day is a cost for all the citizens. And when we thought that COVID was just a way out, now comes the conflict in Ukraine. That which for a country like Costa Rica is so sad because, well, we do not have an army whatsoever. More than 70 years ago, we abolished the army because we rely on international law and multilateralism. We believe in that. We believe that diplomacy and dialogue are the first line of defense. And also, as we believe in international law and humanism, the invasion of Ukraine by Putin is something that we believe it's not acceptable in the 21st century of the humankind. And we need the conflict to come to an end, not only because of the impact in lives and the suffering it has created in the refugee crisis. It's because these conflicts go way further beyond. It not only affects Europe, and the impact of the conflict could be devastating in the developing world. Let me tell you why. One, because of the prices of oil. The world still depends on oil, and this is going to increase the costs of life for everybody around the world, including the most vulnerable and the poor. But also because Ukraine and Russia are among the largest exporters of fertilizer and of inputs for agricultural production. If the war keeps on going, the odds are that Latin America is not going to be able, or many countries are not going to be able to maintain their agricultural production. So they will have to rely on imports. But this is also going to create unemployment. Perhaps it's going to create more migration. Migration in Latin America is mostly from rural areas. And this is going to create tension because of unemployment, inequality. And this is going to affect directly democracy. Democracy, which is already under stress in Latin America. Populism it's really strong in the world, but also in Latin America. And value-driven politics and democracy are under attack and diminished. So this conflict can be hazardous for the stability of the region and of the world. And that's why we need it to come, hopefully, soon to an end. Not only because of the human toll is taken in Ukraine, which is huge and sad, also because it's going to, just like COVID, it's going to have not only the impact of people dying in the hospitals, but the impact of people suffering because of the lack of opportunities. And my final message is for you guys, what you do matters. I was you 20 years ago, or less. So what you do matters. And to the question of Oliver again, we are small, but the strength of what we do, and the strength of what we say is what we do. Costa Rica was, and I'm going to end with this, Costa Rica last year became 200 years independence, we celebrated our 200th anniversary of independence, bicentennial. And the logo of our independence was a small hummingbird, colibri, you see? Also to honor biodiversity. But why a hummingbird? So there's this story And I think this is actually on the animal documentary that's here in France. And the author wrote about this, about the hummingbird story, which I loved it. So there's a great fire on the forest, huge fire in the forest. So all them animals run away from the fire. So you got there the elephant, you got the tiger, you got all of the big ones. And they start looking at the fire, and then all of a sudden they see the hummingbird, a small hummingbird. And the hummingbird was flying to the lake, grabbing with a small peak the drops of water, going to the fire, shipping away the drops and going back to the lake, so on and so forth. So the big ones, the elephant and the tiger, approached the hummingbird and asked him, "So man, what is it you're doing?" And the hummingbird answered, "I'm doing my part. How about you?" So whatever you do matters. It does. Don't feel small. Just act. It's because it's your planet as well. Your generation is the one that's going to be suffering the most. So you need to act. We all need to act. Thank you very much for having me in Sciences Po.
Don't feel small, just act. This is a very strong and powerful motto. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your speech. And now we will leave the floor to the Q&A moment. And Olivier, Professor Olivier Dabène, will take the mic.
Okay, thank you. We have I think we agreed on 30 minutes, more or less, for questions and answers. So it's open now for the floor. Please use the microphone because we are recording the conference, so we do need you to use the microphone. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President, for coming. Muchísimas gracias. Qué privilegio tenerle aquí hoy. You were talking about the most difficult moments during your mandate. I was looking at the presidential debate yesterday, the 2-hour presidential debate. I watched it this morning. And, well, they were also kind of the point criticizing your mandate. I would like to know what was like the best achievement from your point of view, from your mandate. If in 10 years we're talking about you, what would you like us to think? Thank you.
Well, thanks for the question. And again, you should have watched the match, not the debate. No, I think if I have to sum up, even though I know it made me very less popular, the fiscal reform is important because it opened space for the next generation. Our country was highly indebted, and if we were to enter into default, we would have had to change our welfare system. So that opened future for the generation, for the next generation. Also the environmental part. I think Costa Rica used to be like a very good actor, but it was not on the best. And now we became one of the relevant key actors in the climate and the biodiversity discussion and the desertification discussion. And we are very influential, even though we're just 5 million inhabitants. But we are, so whatever Costa Rica says has a great deal of weight. And people ask us to speak out. So that's also relevant. We did that in the middle of a pandemic. And at the same time, we modernized our infrastructure in hospitals and roads. And we did one relevant thing, we defended human rights. In our term, egalitarian marriage became a reality in Costa Rica. Also, abortion in cases of the risk of health of women and emergency can see contraception became a reality in Costa Rica during our term. So those are progressive reforms that I hope that are not going to be taken from us. So those, I believe, will stand for a while, hopefully.
Okay, please come.
Igual, señor presidente, mucho gusto. A los ticos que tenemos acá siempre es emocionante cuando alguien de Costa Rica viene. My question, I did watch the game last night. I did not watch the debate. But my question is, are you afraid of a lot of the things that you've done are going to be erased in the next few years? Because a lot of the commentaries, especially regarding the environment, are not great about the candidates and how they think, especially one. Maybe we have emphasized the environment too much. So is there a little bit of fear that the things that we have done are in some portion going to get erased? Thank you.
Well, yes, and at the same time, no. Yes, because there's also the risk, always and everywhere, that good things can go away. We cannot take for granted any of the good things. And we tend to, for example, democracy, we tend to take for granted democracy. People tend to complain a lot. But when you see that you have an autocrat that can go to war without any opposition, or when you can see that there are autocrats that can put in jail opposition, free press, students, to protest, then you start to, or that they use judges either to silence opposition or to whatever they need to. There's no real division of power. Then you start to put into, you start to value democracy. Similar with achievements of human rights or environment. So yeah, when there's a threat of going back, you have fear. But then again, I don't fear, when I feel that fear, which is normal, the only thing you can do is again act. And I do believe there are many people in Costa Rica and elsewhere that if those things were to be taken away from us, we will be more than willing to act. Perhaps you know. I know people will express their dissatisfaction. I had one moment during my term in which the Congress and the majority of Congress was to approve the fishery law to restart this kind of fisheries that used to drag everything from the seafloor to catch fish. That is very destructive. What's the name of that? Trawling fishery. So they were going to they actually approved the law for trawling in Costa Rica, which is a country. And there were many people publicly in favor of that, but I knew and I had promised that I was against it. So with lots of pressure, I vetoed that law. But the good part is that then lots of people, particularly young people, supported my veto. And now there is no trawling in Costa Rica. So that's very good. And that's why I also have hope. But then we need to act. The worst thing we can do, or there's a saying, but the worst thing that good people can do is remain silent or at the margin of the discussions. We need to get involved.
Another question? Yes, please. Come.
Buenos días, mucho gusto. Thank you very much for coming. This is very interesting. I have a question regarding the environment. As you said, we are progressively not only killing our planet, but also killing our ability to survive as a species on this planet. And I was wondering, so precisely on Costa Rica, I think you had a program on green tourism, and I was wondering, what's your take on social issues that stem from some market-based solutions to the ecological transition? And more generally, I'd like maybe to know what's your stance on the Glasgow Pact, so the implementation of the Paris Agreement, and for the future, where do you think we stand? Thank you.
Well, it's a lot of ground to cover, but well, one thing I need to mention, I think we need to reframe the discussion in terms of climate and market. For example, our decarbonization plan, the 10-pillar plan, went through a thorough study of the Inter-American Development Bank and the University of Costa Rica and our friends from Denmark, Norway, Swedish friends. So they made a study around the plan, and they came up with the plan itself provides a net utility of $51,000 million by 2050. I mean, it's not only good for the environment, but it's way good for the economy. Way good. And I believe that in the discussion of climate change, the word justice should be always put into the discussion. There is no addressing the climate change without addressing social justice like inequality, gender inequality, poverty. The climate discussion, I believe the best framework to address it is within the SDGs. SDGs. Because it's the more comprehensive framework there is. And we cannot think of a change only in terms of climate if there is not a change in terms of decent labor. But then we need to pursue that transition. So that to the, for example, what you mentioned, tourism is an example. When 40 years ago, Costa Rica used to have, at the beginning of last century, 80% of forest coverage. Remember, we are in the tropics. But by 1980, Costa Rica had only 20% of forest coverage. I mean, we lost 60% of forest coverage in less than 100 years. By then, we started pursuing conservation policies through national parks, to save areas, then paying for environmental services of private forests. But when we started doing that, many people said this is going to crash the economy because we will have less land to cultivate. So there was a really strong push because people started saying this is going to crash our economy. But now when we look back, it actually propelled the economy. Tourism through nature, ecotourism, increase of biodiversity have triggered an industry which is a clean industry, one of the most relevant industries of Costa Rica, which is scattered all around the country. There are people, it's about more than 17% of the people that visit Costa Rica do that to watch biodiversity. For example, bird watchers. More than 11% go to Costa Rica to research. So it's a very sustainable, and it's not against human development or growth. I do know we need to have and that's one of the most complex, we need to rethink capitalism in this context, in the climate discussion. And that's perhaps one of the least open debates there is. And I think it's very related, for example, with the concept of what happened with the vaccines during the pandemic. I don't like talking about capitalism. I like the concept of accumulation, wealth accumulation, whatever you think about accumulation. What happens to with vaccines? People started accumulating them. But the solution was the what I call the being selfish, intelligent selfish. If you want to be really selfish and intelligent, the best way to do so is solidarity. Because the fastest way to end the pandemic was to deliver as many vaccines we could everywhere in the world as fast as we could. That might perhaps have prevented the variants to emerge, like Omicron. But that's still only a hypothesis. But similar with capital, or if you were to have more human development and opportunities across the board, perhaps the discussion on migration will not be like the one we're having. If you were to have wealth or human development in the origin of the countries that have migration problems, perhaps migration will not be an issue for the United States or for Europe. But then, again, the smart way of being selfish is solidarity. But the topic of capitalism and climate change it's a great deal. And for me, it's also, yes, for me, what's surprising, and we should not cease ourselves of being surprised, is how come are we still acting the way we're acting while we know we're destroying the planet and ourselves? It's just impressive. We should not cease being surprised at that. But that should be fuel to act, to take action, bold action, ambitious action.
Patricia.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Un placer tenerlo. As Costa Rica is a regional leader in fight against climate change, I wanted to know what does it need to happen for Costa Rica to finally sign the Escazú's agreements? Like, what are the actual breaks from your point of view? Is it going to happen soon or not? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think one of the, which is really embarrassing, is that Costa Rica has not yet become a part of the Acuerdo de Escazú. You know, Escazú is a town in Costa Rica. It was negotiated in Escazú. So we put that, as an administration, we put that for a vote. And it also has to do with, well, the topic that Olivier loves, because we are a progressive government with a highly conservative Congress in power. So my party has a minority. It used to have a minority, now it's so the funny thing, not funny, but we have a progressive executive with a very conservative parliament. So parliament wouldn't approve the Acuerdo de Escazú. They wouldn't approve it. So what can people do? Actually, I believe the problem is that the Acuerdo de Escazú became part of identity politics. That's the problem. It's hostage of identity politics. Politics used in order to picture the enemy and picture where I'm standing. So politicians, regardless if they believe or not in the agreement, they use it to portray themselves. So we lose track of, we lose the purpose of it. What can change that? People can change that. Because now, within democracy, we are not blaming those, we're not blaming enough politically those who are stopping them. We are not holding them accountable publicly. And politicians live out of recognition or lack of recognition. So that's why acting is so relevant. They need enough people need to show the relevance of it and make it evident. I believe that's what's necessary, because in the case of Costa Rica, it's not enough. For example, the government's voice or my voice. I've been saying that for the past years. It's really embarrassing how we discuss it. But they don't care. They don't care. So we need them to care. And the way to do that is hold them accountable. And that's young people raising their voices and saying, we want this to become a law after the republic. I believe that's the need. But I tried my best.
Thank you so much. I don't speak in Spanish. I won't, thank you in Spanish. So I have a sort of two-pronged question. You talked about sort of the strength of small countries, and you also mentioned your policies on payment for environmental services before. In your dealings with other countries of similar size, have you noticed that there's been sort of an appetite to adopt similar policies, or like sort of learn from Costa Rica's experience in trying to mitigate the effects of climate change? And also in connection to that, is there appetite to sort of join together and perhaps resist pressure from big multinational companies that might try to resist those climate mitigation strategies? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. One thing is that there's Costa Rican policy is not to export the particular solution, but to show that change is possible even with limited resources. Our mere existence without an army, with a clean, renewable electric matrix, with an economy that's growing, with large amounts of land and ocean conservation, it's a threat to the arguments of it's not possible. For example, the argument that economic growth is against climate action. So we're open to have people know what we have done, but we're not preaching them to do exactly the same. What we are saying is change is possible, and you should pursue it. And our message in the multilateral arena has to do a lot with this, because, for example, Central America and the Caribbean are within the areas of the world that emit the least carbon emissions, but are amongst the areas in the world which are the most vulnerable to climate change because of hurricanes, floodings, drought. I mean, in the Caribbean is dramatic, the situation. The Caribbean now, in the small states island in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, I mean, they're losing their countries to high tides and to hurricanes. It's not hypothetical, it's happening as we speak. So there's a great deal of moral leverage and that we need to use, because you can talk face to face and ask the question of how come, if there are countries standing on immense power and immense resources, many of those devoted to wage war or to produce nuclear weapons, how come, if the world's biggest threat is climate change, said by the World Economic Forum, followed by biodiversity loss, followed by desertification and the nurture of humankind. How come, if those are the greatest risks in the world, you are devoting your great resources not to solving this? And I have never listened to an answer to that, just silence. But that helps in the negotiation. Certainly that helps. And that's what we try to do. Doing payment for environmental services, I believe, is a great scheme because it also protects livelihoods. And for example, for peasants or landowners or women, we have recently launched a program for women to reforest. And it's great because then we provide for them jobs for like 10 years, protecting forests. They are providing services to the world by absorbing carbon. At the same time, they are growing their families. So I think it's a great scheme. 20 years ago, environmental services people thought it was a bluff. Now, people understand it's a need. So I believe we were the pioneers of that, and I believe it's a great scheme. Can be scaled up, but it's a suggestion. We're not actually. We're very respectful of how we come to France. Persuasive.
Another question?
Hello, Mr. President. Thanks for coming. I have a non-climate related question. What do you think the role of the United States should be in Central America and in the Caribbean?
Thank you. It's a great question. So, currently, the United States has three main interests in Central American, perhaps the Caribbean, but mainly Central America. One of them is drug trafficking, and it's been for a while that. So the main interest used to be the cooperation for security matters and drug organized crime, but particularly drug trafficking. It provided benefits as well. For example, it increased our capacities to respond to organized crime. It's a great externality. But then the second interest that has, it's more evident now, is actually with migrations. So the approach is currently on migrations. And the third topic that's on the agenda is addressing the Chinese influence in the region. So those are the main three topics. What I've been telling our counterparts of the United States is that the best way to address the three of them, it's going to the root causes and investing in human development, in the SDGs in the region. Because migration is a consequence, it's not a cause. It's a consequence of political instability, of drought, of lack of employment. But it's it's an issue that attracts lots of political interest back in the US. It's very sensitive, also to the elections of the US. But the best way to address it is human development. Central America has the scale of Colombia, more or less. It's 55 million people in Central America and the Dominican Republic, which is a bit. Colombia is about 50 million. And if we were to have to create throughout Central America 2 million jobs, we could mostly eliminate unemployment in the region. And 2 million jobs creation for a country with the support of a country like the United States, it's nothing. Through investment or through cooperation. And the benefits of that will be stability, peace, less migration, but the penetration of drug trafficking has a lot to do with economy, let's say. And also will galvanize the region because even though every country is sovereign to have diplomatic relations with wherever they want, particularly the Chinese, also the Chinese they have increased their influence because of how can they cooperate in a very efficient way. I mean, the Chinese have cooperated throughout the world, or in Central America, for example, in infrastructure in a way that others have not. Neither the U.S. nor Europe. The way of cooperation, it's very straightforward, let's say. So I believe the best approach of the United States with Central America has to be with investing in human development. And that's in the best interest of all of the neighbors of the region.
Last question.
Muchas gracias, Presidente, por la charla, and thank you to Sciences Po for organizing it. So I have two questions, actually, but I hope they don't take too long. The first one is in terms of, so I think one of the best things from this government is the strength of the reputation that Costa Rica has built internationally, and I think as an international student, I see it here. And I wonder, what do you think are the main challenges for the new government in terms of external relations and diplomacy? And my second question is, just out of personal curiosity, what's next for you after your mandate is over?
Thank you. Well, I think the challenge in diplomacy, and I have here the Minister of Foreign Affairs, we'll see if he nods or not. Well, I believe the challenge is to, in terms of green and blue diplomacy, remain a relevant actor, persuading others to raise their ambition. We have gained a voice that's suspected in the debate. When we started our administration, we were a nice to have, now we are a must have. But because our coherence in climate action and biodiversity action, it will be a shame to lose that. Not for us, but for us it will be, but because of you see, and I'm going to name a few. For example, our former Minister of Environment, Carlos Manuel, he had a great impact in negotiations. And now he's the head of the GEF, of the Global Environmental Fund. Our current minister, Andrea Mesa, she was our head of negotiations before. Being a minister, she had a great deal of impact on Glasgow. And I know Glasgow is not the best, that's what we have. She's going to be the deputy director of the desertification convention. So, well, Cristiana Figueres is Cristiana Figueres. I mean, Cristiana is like climate rockstar. She's brilliant. She's amazing. And she's such a smart and great diplomat, being also Costa Rican. So our influence is soft power, but it's based on delivering results and coherence. So we need to preserve coherence. And on other international topics, the situation in Latin America, I believe, is going to remain critical. We have the circumstances with Nicaragua. Nicaragua's regime has gone even more oppressive. They have now condemned the opposition through the justice system, but fraud. And they have closed all the media. As I mentioned, they even have students in prison. So Costa Rica has to remain the relevant voice, understanding as well that is the Nicaraguans that need to find solutions to that. But we need to keep a voice also in terms of democracy. And I think we need to defend as well human rights that we should not take for granted. Human rights, democracy in front of populism. I thought populism was going to vanish, but it appears to manage to reappear. Populism was not only former president of the US, I believe it's present even in Costa Rica, and I might add without going into detail. And as for me, I'm going to rest and then look for something to do. Perhaps find a job. Just like you, after this. Find a job.
Well, thank you. I think this is the perfect way to close this conversation. That was fascinating. I don't know if the director wants to close the event. Or you want me to say a few words? So just thank you very much, Mr. President, and good luck for your future, whatever it is. Thank you.